Good morning. Outstanding group here today. I see more chairs filled today than yesterday, so welcome here. You know, pavement management programs have been around for a long time. You can go Google them and search them, and there's all kinds. Most of the time, they're at the DOT level, because it takes specialized equipment to evaluate pavements and to really see the overall condition of your network of roads. It's been interesting because I guess it's been not quite a year. Judge Hudson went to Stacy and said, how do we know that our pavement management program is what it needs to be? And so from there, it kind of started. Michael Gordon of Greenberg Farrell has a lot of data collection stuff he's going to share with you. And it's kind of grown to the point that it is now a good, solid pavement management program for the smaller agencies. Not a big DOT. It's made for you. It really was geared around Judge Hudson in his county, and it works for all counties and cities alike. So we're just excited to be here. First Step Pavement Management is kind of a little team there, but at the end of the day, it's your program. It becomes yours. It's not, there's no patent on anything that's happening here. So we're just very pleased to be here today to hopefully allow you to look at your pavements a little bit differently, because you're going to know the condition of all your roads.
I know I don't have a radio voice and I don't carry, so I'm going to use a microphone. This was a great project to be involved in as far as learning and training. I'm going to say that was probably the main thing I got out of it, is what I personally learned in the training. And Jim Carter's the Sebastian County Road Superintendent. He's here in this red shirt by me. Scott Stubblefield's the County Administrator in my office. We're all enjoying this project. I'll have some comments at the end of it, but probably the main thing I got out of this was developing better relationships and professional relationships with Stacy and her office, Michael Morgan and the services he's got, and Daryl. These are all really good folks. I know all of you work with them to some extent or another. This project started because I was at a point in my career in managing the Sebastian County Road Department functions. I was not really knowing what to do and how to allocate the resources we've got to take care of the road system. So we brought in a third-party analysis, and you're going to see what we did. And then at the end, I'll have some comments to close it. So, Stacy, I think you're going to make a presentation, and we appreciate you being here and your professionalism.
Thank you, Judge, and I appreciate the comments about the training. Training is what I do, so obviously I kind of like it. But the thing about training is that I can give you all kinds of information, I can tell you stuff, I can show you pictures, but until you get out on the road and you're actually doing it, it doesn't matter. So being able to implement that training, that's really what matters, and that's what you guys do. So I think one of the biggest benefits of this team that we've put together is that it's not just me standing up and telling you a bunch of stuff. It's actually putting the pieces in place so that you can do it. You can use this information and actually get some stuff on the ground, because that's what matters. Okay, now how many of you have a pavement management program for your county? I know one. Come on, more of you do. Everybody does. And in fact, even if you think you don't have a plan, that actually is your plan. So everybody has one. So everybody can raise your hand. Stretch. Get some exercise this morning. So just to start out, everybody has a plan. But one of the things that we think, oh, a pavement management system, it sounds so formal, it sounds like something fancy that I don't really know how to do, I don't have that. It's not that fancy. But one of the myths is that if I get this fancy plan, then all my problems are going to be solved. And that's really not true. You're definitely going to be on your way to having a better approach for solving those problems. But it's got to be something that's going to work, and it's got to work for you. So a pavement management system can be a whole bunch of different things, but it's got to be something that works for you and for your agency. And so you can't just do what somebody else does and say, oh, here's this canned system, I'm going to implement that here. There will be parts of it that will work for everybody, but there are parts of it that don't work for everybody. And so what we're trying to get across is that this is a plan that's got to be customized, and it has to work for you. So if it doesn't work, why would you use it? So we're trying to make some improvements there. Now, our goal with pavement management is that we're going to try to figure out what can we do to make the best decisions and use the best tools available to get the most out of our dollars. Everything that we do, we think, oh, this problem is here, I know how to fix that. Or maybe we don't know how to fix it, but we have some ideas. All of those cost money. And a lot of things come down to the dollar amount. Well, I know I'd like to do that, but I don't have enough money to do that. If we all went in and took every road and put 2 inches of hot mix on it, that'd be pretty awesome. But we can't afford to do that, so that's really not an option. So what we're trying to do is come up with some tools and some processes to figure out what can I do that's going to give me the best outcome. All right, so some questions. How do we get started? Because most of you did not raise your hand, which means we kind of need, even if you have a plan, which is not having a plan, we need to get started on having a real plan. So first, let's ask ourselves 3 questions. What do we have? Okay, does everybody know what roads you have? Pretty much, okay. And what do we know about those roads? And then how do we get started with this? So what do we have? We all know what we have to some extent, but now let's get down to the really detailed level. Do you know exactly how many miles of paved roads you have? Do you know exactly how many miles of dirt roads, of chip sealed roads? Do you know the construction history of those roads? Do you know the maintenance history? Is all of that documented somewhere? What all do we know? How much information do we have? Do we have a map? How many of you have a county roads map? Okay, we kind of know where that is. You may have one that is specific to your county, that your county developed. You may have something that is based on the state highway department map. You may have something that can be based on the planning and development districts, the GIS office. There are lots of resources out there that we can use for maps. But what we want to do is take these maps and now use them to benefit us. Now, what do we know about each of these roads? Well, they're roads. We know where they go. We know what they do. Do we know for sure how much we are responsible for? Do we know which ones are private? Are there maybe some subdivisions that have been incorporated into an area, maybe that you used to take care of, that then the city annexed and you no longer take care of? There are some of those subtle changes that happen throughout the years that starts to change how many paved miles we have of our roadway. Are there some private drives? Maybe it was a private drive and then more houses were built, they sold part of that land. Now it's no longer a private drive. Now that becomes part of our maintenance responsibility. So there are lots of things that can change over time. Do I know which roads fall under the state aid system? Okay, let's start thinking about all of those kinds of questions, and partly because this may have an effect on how we approach funding issues. Now, what else do we know about it? Do you know how wide it is? Do you know what the surface is? Do you know how much right-of-way is there? Do you know anything about your ditches? Do you know where the culverts are? Do you know where the bridges are? Do you know where the signs are? Do you know how sharp the curves are? There are lots and lots of things that we might want to know at some point about this road. So the first step is to really get a good inventory of what we've got. Not only what do we have, but what condition is it in? And so the beginning point for our first step pavement management is to figure out what condition is it in. Now, if you were to walk up to, say, 10 different random people from your county, and you ask them, what's the condition of the roads in the county? What do you think about it? What kind of responses do you think you would get? It's the worst it's ever been. It's terrible. And they can probably name 2 or 3 spots that are just horrendous. This is awful. Knock the front end out of my truck. You know, so all this kind of stuff. You can hear some terrible horror stories. Well, that's not really what we want to base our pavement management system on. We want to get a real, unbiased, so to speak, opinion of what condition are the roads in. So we start with this network level. What do we have? Let's look at the big picture. And overall, how bad is it really? And so this first step, what you see here is a map. And what we've been doing is going through for a roadway system and classifying it as good, fair, or poor. But then there are also some roads that are kind of on the verge of turning from fair to poor, and we call those critical. And so what this map shows is that I have some roads that are green. Green is good, that means go. We're good to go on that. Yellow, might need to pause a little bit and take a look at these. Those are what we consider fair. And then the red roads are the ones that are in not so good shape. And those may be the ones that people have called and complained about, but those are the ones that we may need to address. Now, if it's in orange, that's in between yellow and red, matches that whole color scheme. Those are really the ones that we want to target. And then some other things you see here, maybe we've got some locations where we have known issues, like a major pothole or something going on. Let's just get that big picture. Let's map it out, let's look at it. And I'm a really visual person, so I love the color scheme. I love to be able to look at something like this, and you can start to get an idea of how many of those roads are green. How much of that mileage is yellow? How much of that mileage is red? Is it really as bad as everybody says? So. All right, so now, once we get an overall idea, hopefully we're seeing that it's not as bad as people call in and tell me it is. We've got some good things going on here, and that's what we need to capitalize on, is what do we have that's good? Let's take care of what's good, but also try to repair some of these things that are not so good. So in doing that, what we want to do is go in and find out not just what's good, bad, and ugly, but what exactly is going on there? Why is it not so good? What type of distress is it? Is it surface cracking? Do we have structural distresses? Do we have potholes? Is it edge failures? What is it? And then how severe is it? How much of it do I really have? There can be one pothole on a 3-mile stretch, and everybody will hit that pothole and call and say, that whole road's bad. It's not. There's one spot that's bad, but the whole road is not bad. So now we start honing in on how much of that roadway really needs to be repaired. So the amount of distress, we're looking at what do we do on more of a project level. So we've done our first step. We have an idea, and this is a map that was put together for Sebastian County. There's a lot of green and yellow there. That's good. That makes you really feel a whole lot better about your roadway system, because all you hear about are the bad things. So when we can focus on what do we have that's good, I think it gives us a better overall picture of what kind of network I've got. So we finished that first step. Now it's time for second step, and this is where we start making some decisions. And we've got this listing. Most people have some kind of an Excel spreadsheet, maybe. It could be a notebook with a list of the roads, but most county road departments will have some type of listing or inventory of the roadways in your agency. So if we look at all of those and then we start matching up those colors, we don't have to look at it on a picture of a map. We can also look at it in what we're used to seeing. So let's color code that. If you have columns that tell you the name of the road, what's the surface like, how many miles long is it, how wide is it, whatever you know about that, fill in everything that you can, but make sure that there's a column there for the condition. Is it a green? Is it a yellow? Is it orange? Is it red? Now let's start going back and sorting those. Okay, how much of that do I have? And then are those all grouped together? And I kind of like the map picture for this, but you know where your roads are. Do I have one area that's got a lot of not so good stuff going on? Is it spread out? Yeah, do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. And like just data for Sebastian County, was it all local data collection, or was some of the stuff able to get from a state database, or was it all done what was collected locally?
The condition ratings were all done. In fact, Michael's going to talk about that here in a few minutes with his part of it and how he collects some of this data. That was all done under a specific project to get condition ratings for each roadway. As far as the other, David, you have...
We have a database, we have an existing database of our system on it.
Yep, so you had all of that, and that was done.
Generated locally.
Generated locally. We've had a long partnership with our planning and development district and focused on a map, on a digital map. And that also provided digital data per road. That would give you the length of the road, the width of the road, and what other criteria we had in that database. So that's what you see reflected here. We brought that into this project.
so in our second step, what we really need to focus on is the fact that we do have some good. We want to keep those roads good. We have some that are in fair condition. Let's not let them get worse. Let's try to keep those in good condition or bring them back up to good. But it's the critical roads that really need to be the focus, because if you look at a deterioration curve for a roadway, when it's good, and it stays good for a while. And I think is the next slide the one with the curve? Yeah, it stays good for a while, but then over time it starts to deteriorate, and usually that deterioration is going to include some cracking. And with cracking, you just broke the pavement, and now it's open. Air can get in there. More importantly, water can get in there. Water is it's necessary for life, but not for pavements. So it's a bad deal. Once we have water that starts getting in there, all kinds of distresses start happening. So my deterioration speeds up and it gets worse faster. So what I'm trying to do here is focus on those ones that are critical, because that's where that speed of deterioration really picks up. I want to catch those before it turns to a poor condition. Let's bring it back up. Let's seal those cracks. Let's do something. Keep the water out of it and keep that deterioration from getting worse. And so the focus here, we always think, oh, I got to fix the stuff that's really bad. That's what people are calling about. That's what they want done. But to really manage the system, I need to keep pavements from getting into that red condition. I want to take them and catch them in the critical or maybe even the fair condition and bring that condition back up. It costs a whole lot less to do it that way. And I think last year there was a presentation on that, and it talked about how much cheaper it really is, even though it's harder to wrap your head around not fixing something that's bad. Because what does the public think? Well, you're over here working on this road and it's not that bad. I live here and it's horrible. That's not fair. And so it's hard to justify that. It's hard to make that jump. But to save money in the long run, you have to think long term. And so by treating the critical roads, that's really what we're doing, is thinking long term and spending minimal amounts to keep those roads in the green condition. You get a lot more time out of it. Now, once you get that under control, now we can go back and fix some of these roads that everybody calls and complains about. So it makes more sense money-wise, but you have to have a long-term vision of what makes sense. All right, so now the next question is, how do you fix it? What are my alternatives? Well, I have to understand what caused the distress. Is it cracking? Is it because of fatigue? Is it a surface issue? Is it a structural issue? I need to understand what's going on with the pavement, because if I understand what caused it, I'm going to be better able to fix it. But in fixing it, what are my choices? What can I do? What do I know how to do? What am I good at? I want to do the stuff I'm good at. I might want to learn how to do some new things. But what is my expertise? What can I do in-house? Or maybe there are some things that I know I can't do it, but I think it's a really good fit. Maybe I need to contract that out. And so we start making some decisions and setting some policies on, when this happens, here's my answer. Or when this happens, but I can only do something minimal, what's the best choice? What's the best thing I can do? So we've got to know what happened. We've got to match the treatment to the distress, and drainage, drainage, drainage. Water is always the enemy. So before you get too hyper about looking at exactly how to fix it, make sure you don't have water that's coming in under the pavement, over the pavement, through the pavement, all that. Fix the drainage first, because if you don't fix the drainage, it doesn't really matter what you do to it, the problem will come back. And then make sure you do that treatment at the right time, and this gets into best practices. What's the best way to do this? Do I need to do this treatment in the summertime? Do I need to do like chip seal? We wouldn't do that in the middle of winter. We need to do that in summer. So now I need to start thinking timeline. When do I need to do that? Back it up and start planning ahead. When's the best time to seal cracks? Consider your weather conditions. So all of those best practices that go along with each of those treatments. Right, we got just a couple of examples. Anybody seen anything like this in their area? That happens a lot. Sometimes the soil doesn't cooperate with us, but God gave us what He gave us, and we have to work with it. So we need to figure out what caused that. Well, maybe we have water, maybe there's a soft spot in the subgrade, maybe I've got just different types, somebody said earlier, a buffet of soil types, and that happens in a lot of places. But what's there is what's there, and there may be pockets of soil that are not that great. Okay, so the pavement that worked everywhere else suddenly doesn't work there, and it's because of what's supporting it. And so let's figure out what's going on. And then I've got some options. I'm going to look for any potholes that need to be filled, because that's kind of a safety issue. So we take care of that, but I could seal those cracks. If I seal the crack right at the edge of that depression, is that going to fix it? No. It might keep water from getting in under the pavement, possibly, but it's not really going to fix it. So here's where I'm starting to think through, what are my choices? I can remove and replace that section. Okay, that's probably our best option. If we can dig out that section of soil that's not so good, replace it with some crushed aggregate, I'm going to get much better support. But is that more expensive than sealing the crack? Yeah, so now I've got to start making this decision. It's a trade-off. I'm going to spend more money. I'm going to get a better, more longer lasting product. Okay, but the dollar is kind of going to make that decision for me. So I want to have a toolbox of what are the options. This is a minimal fix. It's not going to last as long, but it doesn't cost near as much. Here's a better fix. It costs more. What can I afford to do this year? Maybe I can do something minimal right now and then put that real fix into the budget for next year. But I definitely want to do something to keep it from getting worse during that year while I'm waiting on the budget to catch up. So deciding what to do. And always at the bottom of the list there is the option to do nothing. But what happens to your deterioration curve if you don't do anything? You're going downhill. And we don't want to slide down on that curve. Okay, anybody have alligator cracking? Yep, we see that. That is typically a structural problem, and so we could seal those cracks. We could prolong the life of that pavement, but that's a structural problem, and so that means it's a deeper fix that needs to happen. And again, what's the timing? Okay, what can I afford to do now? What can I afford to do later? If I could afford to completely come back in and do an overlay, maybe I want to mill that out, take it completely out, that's great. But again, we're back to that decision. How much does it cost? What can I do now? What can I do later? And obviously I could do nothing, but that's not going to get better. And alligator cracking always develops potholes. So then that's a recurring thing that I'm having to address. Now, figuring all this out and how to make those decisions, a lot of that is training. And that's the part of the team that I'm really in charge of, learning to identify what caused that distress, because I can do the best job of matching the treatment if I know what caused it. Okay, there are 2 classes through the T-Square program, Tech Transfer, that I do with the Highway Department. One of those is asphalt pavement maintenance, and that covers a lot of best practices for some of our patching, crack sealing, and chip sealing, that sort of thing. And then also basic pavement management, and that's more of not specifically what do you do, but how do you manage that system? How do you make those decisions? And on our website at cttp.org/T2, and we do have a request a class form. You can just click on that, choose the classes you want, and then I'll get a notification. And Laura Carter's still in the back of the room. Yep, she's back there. She will get that notification also, and we'll get something set up. All right, we call this first step. That's getting the big picture. Second step is kind of honing in on a little bit more detail. But really, instead of first step, second step, this just needs to be your plan. You can do this any way you want to. You can have a paper list of your roads with notes on it if you want to. That works. As long as you know what you've got, you know what condition it's in, and you make decisions on what to do about it, that's a plan. That's fine. A lot of us have Excel spreadsheets or maybe a database where we put a lot of information in, and then it can get way fancier than that. But the point is, once there's a system set up, you've got to keep it going. It can't be a one-time thing. This is an ongoing process. So when you're trying to get this set up, who has an extra person in the office that doesn't do anything and has time to devote to setting up a pavement management system? Now, we're going to point fingers in here and make fun of people, but we really don't have any just guys hanging out that have nothing to do. That's not realistic. So think about that. Yeah, we want the fanciest thing out there, but how am I going to maintain it? So again, thinking long term. How am I going to keep the system going? Because 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, this system should still live. It should still be working. It can be adapted, it can be changed. There's lots of stuff that we can do. So make some decisions. How do you want to do this? And I would recommend do something that can grow. An Excel spreadsheet, you can always add columns to it. A booklet, you can always add pages. You can always add to it. But start with something that's manageable. Decide how you're going to collect this information and then do it. It can be a manual distress identification survey. You could send people out, there's a crack here, you can draw it on a map, you can do pages with the diagrams of the road. You can do it with some automated imaging systems. There's some super fancy, expensive stuff. Usually, I would recommend trying to hit that somewhere in the middle. But determine what those distresses are. Some agencies are looking also at roughness measurement. And is Dave Grimmer in the room? Nope. Okay, he was supposed to be here at some point, but he's got a cell phone app that measures the roughness of the road. And there's something called the International Roughness Index, the IRI, and what his phone measures is something similar to that, but it just gives you a relative roughness index. How rough is that road? When the number goes up, it's getting rougher. Now, does that indicate that it's got distress? Maybe, maybe not. It may not pick up all the distresses, but it's certainly one of those first pass condition, you know, people call when the road's rough. So it can start helping you to identify that here are some places we may have some trouble. That does not tell you what the distress is. You still need to go through that part of it, but it's something that is available. And then the automatic road analyzer, that's big fancy stuff. Highway department does that, 55 miles an hour, lasers collect all kind of stuff. It's awesome, but most of us can't afford to do that. So there are lots and lots of things available, lots of things you can do, but it's up to you. It's got to be your system. It's got to be your policy. What can you do? How do you want to spend your money? What makes the most sense for you? All right. Timeline. This is one of the things that sometimes is hard. You get excited about it. Ooh, let's do this now. Or yesterday. Anybody ever heard, I need this and I need it yesterday. Well, that's not going to happen. That's not realistic. But we say stuff like that. But think about, when do you want these projects to happen? And then start going backwards. What are all the things that you need to do? Once you have an idea of what projects you want to do, you got to get estimates, decide whether you're going to do this in-house or you're going to contract it out. If you contract it out, what about the documents? Do you have a legal team that has to review those documents? Do you need to create new specifications? How are you going to manage the construction process? How are you going to verify that you're getting good quality? We've got to have some specs in place. So think backwards. What is all of this going to mean? Well, it kind of means we need to start right now to be doing some things next summer. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's not a super quick thing. It will evolve over time, but it does take a while to get all of these things done. It takes a while to make those decisions. Now, you get all this fancy stuff, and like you get your map with the color codes, and you can see what percentage of your roads are good, fair, poor. And one of the really nice things about the pavement management system is that it gives you a tool that when somebody calls and complains, you say, hey, I've got a system, we have policy tables, this is how it works, but you don't need to tell everything you know. Okay? If you tell everything you know, there are some really good things in what you know, but you also might invite some criticisms. So that's another decision that's got to be customized for you. You may not want to tell everybody what percentage of good, fair, and poor roads you have. Maybe that needs to just be internal, but make it your system. Make it what works for you. And if there are things about your system that can help with public education, like explaining why are we fixing this good road when there's really nothing wrong with it, and I've got my road that needs a lot of help. Okay? That can help answer some of those questions. It makes sense. So, in conclusion, leave a legacy. It's your system. Make it what you want it to be. Make it something that's manageable and that you can maintain. All right, and now Michael is going to tell us some really cool stuff. These are some of the fancy toys, the stuff that I don't completely understand, but he knows how to work all the magic. So he's going to show you some of the options. I can tell you about starting with the paper and the pencil and making the pictures and walking the road, and he's going to tell you some really fast ways to get a lot of information, because most of us don't have time to go out and walk every road. So Michael?
And before we move on, does anybody have any questions they want to ask before we get into some of this? Thank you, Stacey. What we want to look at is most agencies use some type of road book or road list. A lot of times it is on just basic Excel, having the name of the road and then the attributes of that road, right of way, how long that road is, when it was built, when it was accepted, just all sorts of information inside these road books. And they all come in different flavors and varieties, but they typically have the road name and then the attributes. After the first step, what we like to do is add a condition column. And so at a glance, you can see inside your existing road book the condition of those roadways inside your system. We then link those individual roadways in there. And you're able to drive exactly where you are on the map. So you have the blue cursor here that shows you exactly where. Typically, you'll have the 2 monitors set up, but you're virtually driving your roadway system and observing your structural or surface distresses from inside your office. This usually saves a lot of time from getting people inside of a single truck and having to drive all across the county. Again, you can identify individual locations. You see a roadway here, and you want to see what happens to it. You pop right to it and see it.
Up there, your top left there, what is it, Arkansas, in Adams State, 2015? Are you telling me that just Sebastian County has this video presentation?
That's correct. Arkansas is meant to be the idea that we can do this anywhere in Arkansas. And in summer of 2015 is when this video was run. So you'll be able to see roadways from summer 2015, summer 2017. You'll see the changes over time.
So you're saying my county has that video available?
You can have that video available, that's right. You have to drive it to actually do the inspection. But we're not recreating Google Street.
Pull it up today.
Not yet. Yeah, next week. But it's an augmentation. This is all, the platform is Google Earth Pro. It's a free program. It's open source. We are building layers on top of that in order to better manage your paving system. So you're able to drive up the road, see what's happening in real time. If you stop it, speed it up. All those functionalities. And again, it all sits on a hard drive that sits right next to your computer. You don't feel like putting in a full database. There's also web versions of this that you can log into the website that are under development. But this is the simplest way we can get you guys the information in those places. See exactly where you are on the
He asked a stupid question. Who shot that video? You shot that.
Typically, we're not going to do the gravel roads because you guys have those. If you, Greenberg Farrow has, Michael's put together a series of cameras, and from the time when we started with Sebastian County to where it is today, so much more information is being captured now. This is actually getting on every one of your roads and driving it and assessing it and putting this together for you. And that's what Greenberg Farrow and Michael has put together a team that does this data collection. And that's going to be, that's kind of what you pay into, right? That's not a free service that somebody just goes out and does for you. You pay into it, and then you get this information which helps you better establish what to do. So that up here where it says Arkansas, that can be your county name and when it was taken. And so you can get all this information.
How often is that updated? Because that road conditions change all the time.
We're recommending every couple of years, especially early on, because remember, this is at a moment in time right now. This isn't something that's been running for years that we've got established databases on, that we know how, we've kind of got our curves and how long things are lasting. This is a first time. This is the first time it's been available, so when you get it, you're probably going to find your pavements perhaps at their worst condition, because now we're going to make decisions that are better. But we think every 2 years starting out is a good That way you can see how it's improving over time. You get updated maps, which will be very beneficial to you. And we can talk about over there at the booth if you want to stop by there. Mike can talk about individual, because I know there are costs associated with this. It's very inexpensive versus what you get out of it. I know all you guys have questions and stuff, and I know it's going to be hard to answer from here. And hey, David.
I will say, of course, the highway department is required to do this, and they have the, and y'all seen the big yellow vehicle, the ARAN, automatic road analyzer system, and we're required to do that every other year for the whole system. And so they continuously do this and have it mapped out. And so we basically do a lot of the same videos. We have a video referencing system. We've been doing it since the mid-90s or so. And every 2 years they have to do every lane mile of the highway system. And we can use this to do the same type of thing you're talking about. It's a system. It's a pavement management system. If you have the funds to do it. The thing we're complaining about is that we don't have the funds to go out there and keep these pavement preservation going.
Right. And the reason you have to do it, obviously, is because roads are changing, right? The roads are here, but they're on this curve somewhere, so you got to know where you are. Nothing stays the same in our roads. They never seem to go this way, right? The graph is always going this way. But anyway, this is what Greenberg Farrow's role on our team is to collect data on your roads and establish a map for you. And that's just first step. That just gets you the ability to make better decisions on your roads. But you got to know where you are before you know where you're going. You know, I think it's fascinating in that you can uncover so many things about your roads. And Michael didn't get into it so much, but he can show you where every pothole is on your county road system. He can tell you where every structural failure is on there. He can count every sign for you, every bridge. You know, there's a lot of data collection that you can get here to help you. Obviously, we're talking about pavement management today and these surface conditions and how to make better decisions. So go ahead and push me up here. So I'm going to kind of break it down maybe a little bit more personal level, and some of this is going to be the same thing that Stacy just said. I've been told that this is the time where you all take your breaks and you turn your phones on and stuff because I'm talking. Several of you have said that. So if you want to leave the room and go check out, whatever you want to do, I guess this is the time to do it. But anyway, so let's just ask some of the most basic questions. And I know Stacy had mentioned this, but how many miles of road do you oversee? And when I go out and I start talking, and many of you have asked you these questions, we usually get, well, we got 400 or 500, right? I mean, just think about this for your county. How many miles of road do you have? And do you have it down to the mile, or you have a range that you think you have? Because it's always changing, right? New roads are you're paving new roads. A lot of you inherited a system, right? And you probably were told that this is how many miles you have. You haven't maybe counted them all. We just know that that's what we've always had. That's what we were told that we have in our system. And so then you can break it down further and say, how many paved miles of road do you have? Some sort of asphalt surface, be it a chip seal, an overlay. Start thinking about that with your county. What information do you truly know, and how confident are you in that information? Because I'm kind of a simple person, so I kind of get befuddled. I go out and you say, well, how many miles you got? Me go, 600 or 700. Right? And I'm thinking, well, you don't know the exact number of miles in your system? Isn't that, I was just shocked, but it's true. Because many of you inherited a system, and it's hard to, I know, I listen to conversation, they say, Jackson Road out there, we've got some problems on it. They go, now, which one is that? We have to go up here, and is that the one that's, and y'all are finding your roads, right? Because you don't know them all. There's a lot of them out there, and your task is enormous on how you're going to have to maintain that system. And so then you get into the question, do you know the overall health of your network? And, remember, we look at this chart. Like, here's our pavement starting out good, and they're on this path, and we can do some things to keep them good. But if you looked at your whole system, do you know where every road is on that life cycle curve? Do you know which ones are good, fair, critical. If you can catch those critical ones now, man, you can save yourself so much money. So it's important to know at least that family. We don't know, we typically know our poor ones, right? Those are the ones that you're getting phone calls for. And so let's just talk about how much your roads are worth, the asset that you have. And there's a lot of different ways you can look at this. I just like to ask these questions and look at it a different way to challenge ourselves in how we're looking at our pavements. If you've got, I'm going to guess it's probably $200,000 a mile to set up the base and overlay road. Sometimes we set up base and we chip seal them, but let's say it's $150,000 a mile for our structure and our surface. If you've got 400 miles, that's $60 million. And that's just a lot of money to me. I just start thinking, you're overseeing such big amounts, and some of you got more miles than that. That doesn't even count your gravel roads. That's just your paved roads. So you have an enormous investment already in your system. And so then we decide, well, how are we going to decide how to take care of it? How do we decide what projects to do next year? And so that's the question. How do you decide? And I know in talking, a lot of times it's this, right? Hey, we got something out here, let's go. We start reacting. We've got some problem out here, we got a washout over here. We have some washouts this year early in the year. My gosh, we had a lot of rain, right? We had a horrible winter, so we're getting all these calls, and it's all we can do to go out and react to the problems on our road. So a pavement management system hopefully can start getting us to where we know which roads, when we get up to a bad winter or these wet times of year, which ones are going to be more subject to failure, so we catch them before we get there. And that's the idea of it, right? To keep your good roads good. We would like to take every road and bring it up. Do you do most of your work in-house? Do you do preventive maintenance, would kind of be the first question. What do you do for prevention of your roads? We build them, and then what do we do to keep them up? I was going to say, how much do you do it in-house or do you contract it out? But then I guess the question needs to be, do we do it? Do we do pavement prevention? Do you have the workforce? Do you do it? And what specifications do we use when we go out and we do take care of our roads? And do you have specifications? You have a plan, as Stacy said, we all have a plan, we're all doing activities. Are there specifications? If a contractor comes in, there's going to be some specifications, there's going to be some expectations, and you should expect the same of yourself, right? I always default to the state specs. They're tried and proven, and the specifications that we use, we can always go there, at least to start with what we're doing out there in the field. Now, simplest of all questions, perhaps, is do you have the capability to fill or seal a crack in your road? How many of you have a crack sealing operation? Okay, we got some that do, some that don't. And the very basic of it is that water is our enemy. Water, as Stacy said, that's the culprit. I used to roof houses in the summer, and that was the culprit then too. We got to keep water out of things. And it's true in this case too. We can start off with a good pavement, and there's some things we can do early, but we're going to ultimately start getting those cracks, and we've got to take care of them. So if you don't have the ability to seal a crack, I'd say that's the most vital operation you can have. Get it early and get out there and have a plan to seal a crack, because it doesn't get better once the crack's there. It only goes quicker on that curve. Okay, you agree with this statement? Is the problem that you have too many miles of road and not enough money to take care of it? Is that a true statement? True? Could be. And this is the challenge. This is the challenge we talk about today. It could very well be the reality. It could also be perception. You could be perceiving that you don't because we're chasing those worst roads that we have. They are budget killers. They will take a lot of money because those are the ones we get the calls on. And those are the ones that are going to cost us the most money. All the roads are heading this way, and we're spending our money down here, and we've got to be able to keep our good roads good. Any successful pavement management program is going to do that. Simple truth is that until you know what you got, both in miles and in condition, you have to have that information. And as soon as we get away from the worst first mentality that's what drives us as we take care of our worst roads, if you can get away from that, then you're going to know if it's true or not. Then you're going to know if you truly don't have enough money for the miles of road that you have. And that is the value of this whole pavement management system. It helps you look at your roads in a different way. We don't have plans just for the worst roads. We have plans for our good, our fair, our critical, and our bad ones. And it has to be a balanced approach if we're going to be successful. Any pavement management program is going to have, to some level, some of these things. These are some attributes and some positives. You know, the main goal is to prioritize projects such that we improve our condition, right? We've got when you look at your map, over time it should get better. Wouldn't it be great just to have green and yellow roads in your system? That would be awesome. We don't have anything failing, and that's the goal. That's the goal. So we have to know what we have, and so we break them down into some categories. We assign some activities to each of those good, fair, critical, and lost roads, and it's going to end up saving you money. And it seems weird, but it's going to save you money because it's a lot less expensive to take care of your good and fair than it is these down here. So we have to get these under control. And then when we free up that money, then we can go back and take care of the worst of the roads. Perhaps, it's going to take some required and dedicated funding. The pavement management program isn't a one-time shot. You have to have some dedicated resources that you're going to put to it. But perhaps the best thing that is that it's sustainable. You know, when some of you guys aren't going to be in office in 10 years here. Believe it or not, you won't. And some of you already know it. Some of you already have a plan. But things change, right? You're going to be here for so long, and then you're going to go into your retirement, or you're going to go do another job, or whatever it is. It's sustainable. It's something that you're leaving behind for the next group, so that it's a sustainable plan that continues to run. And that's awesome, in that when you leave, you've left it in so much better shape than you were, and you've given your county a pavement management program that's going to last. We have to move away from the worst first philosophy, and perhaps, and in red below you, the budgeting process. If you have this information, now you're able to plan your budgets and plan your activities. And it's a lot harder to say, hey, we need more money, our roads are in bad shape. But if you can show them a plan, and you can say, look at what we've got, and here's our 10-year plan. Once you get there, it's a lot easier. People start understanding what you're saying, and people buy into it a lot more. This is an example, and we don't have many 20-year studies, so pardon the fact that it goes up to 2003, but this is Kansas DOT, and they took on a pavement preservation program. They funded it, and what this is they had 43.4% of their interstate and non-interstate, and I know this is a state highway department, but through pavement preservation, over time, they were able to have 93% good, and they've taken their poor, where it was 1 out of 5 was bad, took it down to 1 out of 100. Okay, so wouldn't that be a great place to be? Look out, I've got 93% of my roads in pretty good shape. That's awesome, and that's what pavement preservation did for Kansas DOT. Okay, ultimately, you can't have a pavement management program without knowing where you are. And I'm going to point something here. This road right here. Just keep that in mind, because this road we're going to talk about here in just a second, that is Sturgeon Road in Sebastian County. And we're just going to go over a project that we have there. But wouldn't y'all all like to have this map to help you in your program? Sturgeon Road has lived its life, and it's got down to here. When we looked at it, we had a map, and we said, well, this road it's nearing, it's not in good shape. It's right over there along that line of being fair and critical, and it's time that we need to do something to it. And so we assessed the priority is that we take care of these critical roads. These ones, before they get into poor condition, is that we take care of these critical ones. It's going to save you the most money. If I could spend $50,000 and it's going to save me $150,000 or $200, that's good money spent, right? It pays for everything that you've done in 1 mile, much less a 4.5 mile project such as this was. Now, last year, some of the judges would remember this, some of the road folks here won't, but Dr. Larry Galehouse came and talked to us from the National Center of Pavement Preservation, and he said, what would you say if I told you that you could chip seal a road and have it look like hot mix? And I can remember everybody writing, and they went, wow, that's kind of a cool deal. We can make something look like hot mix with chip seal. And we probably said, well, this guy's from Michigan, no wonder, you know. But anyway, he came and he told us that. Well, through our first step pavement management with Sebastian County, which is now the Sebastian County Pavement Management, it enabled us to find a road that was an existing hot mix road. Go ahead and turn it. Sebastian County has, their roads consist of hot mix and chip seals predominantly. They've got a vibrant crack sealing program which helps Sturgeon Road. When we talk about this, they were able to keep the water out. We extended it out longer than had they not had that crack sealing program. But it was one that had come close, and it's right here in this critical condition, and coined by Jim Carter, I believe, right here on the front row. He can raise his hand. I believe he coined this double chip seal with the fog hybrid seal. So we've been calling it that ever since, and I'm fired up about hybrid seals. But what it is it's a chip seal that uses a large aggregate, right? We have the class 1 aggregate. Then we're gonna chip seal with that. Then we're gonna sweep it off. Then we're gonna come back with a smaller aggregate. In this case, a class 4 aggregate. We're gonna sweep it off, and then we're gonna apply a fog seal to the surface. Now, because this was new, we had to have several meetings. We all get together. We're talking about the process, kind of what we're gonna have to do to get there. We talked about the aggregate that we were gonna use, and APAC, who Teddy Kraft is here somewhere back here, APAC, they were such a great partner to Sebastian County because they agreed to make a product that they typically didn't make for this process. And so working and getting them involved in the process, just going through the traffic control and all those things, we put together a set of specifications and went to bid, and Salt Creek Paving was awarded the contract. So now that we've got the contract, now we all come together again, because now we want to talk about and make sure everybody's on the same page. And again, you had Sebastian County, obviously there. APAC was very interested in the process, trying to make sure that they do everything correctly. We had our first step pavement management team there, and then the contractor, and we just went through a lot of good information shared, the process, when they're going to start, expected the quantities, the design that was required, so we knew exactly how we were going to shoot. Traffic control was going to be a big issue on the fog seal. All these things were covered. And so here's the project, and you can see the condition of Sturgeon Road. A lot of crack seals, a lot of man hours out there to make sure that this road lasts as long as it could. And here's our first spray application. Just kind of another shot of it. And you can see the difference in the macro texture. Here's this coarse seal. You can see how much smoother the pavement was before we did this. So we've got a long ways to go to get it to look smooth like hot mix. Okay? And that's the difference in the aggregate. This was APAC's material, a class 1. The class 4 was about half the size. That's what you're wanting in this process. That's the first seal and the second seal. So we've done the first seal. This is the second seal, and you can see coming out of the chip spreader, the rock's a little bit smaller. And then now you see clearly the difference in the macro texture. We went from being very coarse to tightening it up with this. Now this hasn't been swept over here yet, and then you got another example of it. From coarse to a little finer macro texture. As soon as we got through, we fog sealed it. We selected a fog seal that was going to stay blacker longer. There's so many different kinds of materials out there. Consult your suppliers, because there's some that rejuvenate. You don't want to have rejuvenators when you go on top of chip seals, but we selected the right one for it. And you can see traffic control is of essence. It took us about an hour and a half of traffic control. We had to shoot a section, wait an hour and a half, then we could turn traffic to it, then shoot another section. And ultimately, if you know how this is going to work, I've got to give Mike a second. You'll get to see the finished product of it.
What's the curing time on the fog seal?
It took us about an hour and a half before we closed it down for an hour and a half, and then we could turn traffic to it. And it probably dried quicker than that, but it took an hour and a half. Here you see it before. You're going to see some before and after of Sturgeon Road. It's a 4.5 mile section, and Judge Hudson's going to come talk a little bit, and I think he's going to cover some of these cost numbers for you. That guy in Michigan told us we could make it look like hot mix, and we came close, I think. By having a plan and getting everybody together on the same team, I think we did a really good job, and I hope that Sebastian County's happy with it. So they get to speak on their own behalf on that too. So Just a loop. Let's move on then. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? Looks better than I guess I would have envisioned it first when we just had a concept. And here's kind of a, it's okay, I told you could turn your phones on. You take the call right now. It's okay? Don't you worry about it. If anybody's napping or whatever, you just get it out of the way. This is just kind of some still shots of it. And the word on smoothness, Stacy touched on this, there's a road bump app that, smoothness in and of itself is not a distress, right? It doesn't say that there's a crack. It doesn't say that anything's wrong. It is a smoothness check. The state uses IRI. This was an app, and David Grimmer's is here at some point. Go talk to him about it if smoothness is of importance to you. The smoothness, it wasn't bad, but the smoothness depreciated a little bit after we did this because we've added a very stout treatment here. This isn't just a one seal process. And we did a lot to this pavement, and it rides very good. I mean, I've been over it several times, just worrying to death, making sure it's going to stay together. So I drive up and down it all the time whenever I go down there. But smoothness is something that, if that's important to you, and most of you don't know what an International Roughness Index is. It's not a part of your program, but if you want to be able to look at smoothness, there's this road bump app, and if David's here, please stop by. We're trying to see how we can incorporate that into a pavement management program.
Does it ride like a seal, or does it?
What?
Does it ride like a chip seal?
It rides a little smooth. Well, it's a trick question, but if we had that course aggregate, if we'd have stopped after the class 1, it would have been a little louder, right? And the whole idea was that we continue to choke it down. And I think over time, it's going to continue to ride better and better. And so I would like Mr. Grimmer, with his app, he's run it twice. He ran it before and after. I'd like for him to run it again now and maybe again next year and just see what changes in smoothness we've had over time. Because it definitely, you saw the macro texture. You get a good smooth hot mix pavement. We've added a little grit to this, right? But we did make it considerably smoother than if we'd have used that class 1 or class 2 rock.
I might understand that you sweep that after each application.
Yeah, you need to sweep the excess rock off. We'll seal it and we'll sweep the excess rock off. It was just a day wait in between each one of them.
What is the cost comparison? What's the cost a mile?
And Judge Hudson's going to cover that, I believe. And I actually think Judge Hudson's up. So let's see what questions he doesn't answer, and then we'll get more questions afterwards. The Honorable Judge Hudson.
Well, once again, this project was very much a learning curve for me personally, and I think for all involved, and really good people to work with, professional people that are available to all of you to help you in determining how to manage your road department. And that was the whole basis of this project. How do you take the money that you've got in your road budget and apply it in the smartest, most effective manner over a period of time? How many years are you going to serve as county judge? How many years are you going to be in office? What is the condition of the road system now? And if you're going to serve for, 4 or 5 terms, 10 years, 10 terms, 20 years, and we're going to go to 4-year terms, how long are you going to be in office? What are you leaving? You don't make an impact on your road system in 1 year. It takes a multi-year plan. It takes a systematic approach to the road system. And I was at the point, I didn't really know how to take the money that is in the Sebastian County road budget and apply it effectively. And that's why we want to do this study. I've kept this study internal. I've not reported this to the quorum court. I've not reported this to the media. I've not used it in any of that manner. This has all been internal. Now, it can be used for all of that, and it can help with public relations. It can help with any of those, and all of us might handle that differently. How you interact with your quorum courts, for example, or how you interact with the public. I like all this internal. I think this is my responsibility to figure out how to spend this money, which roads to select, which roads to repair, what you're going to do to a road if you're going to improve this road in this fashion and this other road in another fashion, that's your decision with your road, with your professionals. I haven't had that discussion with the quorum court in my county, but you might apply that differently. So why did we have the study? I needed direction for since 2002, 2003, that's when we started laying asphalt. Prior to that time, our emphasis had been chip sealing all of our roads. We were taking gravel roads and chip sealing roads. Judge Harper, that was the main emphasis of his administration. He took a lot of gravel roads and sealed them. And I would say for the average county that doesn't have a lot of sealed roads, that's the best bang for your buck, is just to chip seal your roads. Don't worry about asphalt. Don't worry about that investment. And Crawford County has done that. Judge Hall, when he got elected, he invested in all the chip seal equipment, and they think he's the greatest judge they've had in a long time over there, because systematically over a period of years, he has sealed a bunch of roads. They're no longer dusty in those neighborhoods, and that was the best bang for the buck, and they're excited about that. Now they're probably going to go, I think they're to the point now they may start laying asphalt. In 2002, 2003, I started laying asphalt. 158 miles of asphalt roads in Sebastian County. Well, I was excited about that. I had a clear vision. We took traffic counts and where the road was positioned in the county, and we determined where we were going to put that money. And Arcola was excited because we were spending probably $1 million a year on asphalt. We got to the point where we did the high priority roads, and then are you going to asphalt lower priority roads? And that's kind of where we were on this. And I haven't done any more asphalt roads. The chips, this hybrid chip seal for a road in a certain travel frequency category, it would be appropriate. Our bread and butter still, to maintain the system, is going to be chip seal. That's how we're going to maintain the integrity of our system. For the higher traveled roads, we're going to still do, the highest traveled roads, we'll still most likely do 2 inches of asphalt. Because the asphalt road is better ride, it's longer wearing. This double chip seal is still appropriate for a higher traveled road, but maybe not the highest, because it's cheaper. We had, and I've spent back in 1977, 76, 77, 78, that's when we first started looking at our road map. Now, it wasn't digital at that time, but we've invested a lot of time, effort, and energy in a digital road map. You got to know what you got out there, and it helps me to look at the map visually. We have 429 miles in our system. We've probably got the smallest, geographically, Sebastian County is the smallest geographic county in the state of Arkansas. When you take 70,000 acres out of our county that's in Fort Chaffee, that even reduces the road size. So that's why we have this mileage. 158 miles asphalt, 243 chip seal, 28 gravel. Some of those gravel we could probably pave. We have right-of-way, trees, issues like that. Some of them we're probably never going to pave those. So the cost of, and Jim Carter, if any of you, I know we've got 19 new county judges, and there's different levels of experience here. If any of you need any fundamentals, Jim Carter would be glad to. I'm going to volunteer Jim. He's got the data. He can go over any of this in detail about how he calculates the cost. If we did a single chip seal this year using Class 1, just the cost of the materials and oil, $16,250 a mile. For this hybrid double chip seal, if we did it ourselves, $36,861. If we did a 2-inch asphalt overlay in our market, it's about just under $100,000 a mile just for the materials. And about $3,000 average cost on crack sealing. Crack sealing is a pain, and it's an obligation, it's time consuming, and it's a responsibility. But it's a big deal. So what we did this year is we focused our county road department efforts on chip seal. We bid this hybrid project, and we got a $61,397 per per mile cost. Now, I'll say we got more than that out of this project because Rock Creek, the contractor, they were professionals. And there was more learning for me and for Jim and the others. They did an outstanding job, and one of the things that I was impressed about them was they're in the business to make money. That means they're going to get the work done, they're going to do the work well, but they're going to do the work and get the work done so they can go make money somewhere else. That's a little bit different than how we are. We're not working to make a profit. So sometimes we might have a little more lackadaisical approach to timeliness, but we shouldn't, because you want to get as much work done as you can do as well, and go take care of something else. So there are little tricks that we learned. They were running triaxle trucks. They had how many trucks they were running in case one broke down. To keep everything flowing, they stockpile chips, and that was another interesting discussion we had that I learned a lot. Your chips and how dusty your chips are. Every time you haul chips and you stockpile them, you're going to create more dust. You need to have the chips ideally washed and some dampness, and there's a chemical reaction which I don't really understand, but a damp chip in the connection to the oil, you're going to have a better result versus dusty chips. The last 2 years we had dusty chips, and we had some unhappy people. We had a lot of loose stone. It just wasn't good work. This year, with what we've learned and keeping the chips damp, and some other adjustments that Jim was able to make on the aprons and keeping the material from being wasted, we've had much better chip seal success. So that was another learning curve that just talking to Stacy, talking to Michael, talking to Daryl, these folks can help you understand and train you. And I'm not going to underrate that. I know we got a lot of new county judges. We got other people in different levels of experience. I've been in county government a number of years, but I don't have it all figured out. And I'm learning something every day. And these people really help me, and they're here available to help you. It's not free. You know, the study, Mike Morgan is a firm, and there's a fee associated with this study. We did bid also state aid through the state aid program, and I know we all do our state aid programs differently. I chose to use state aid money, plus we're supplementing it for about $600,000 this year. We're going to do some asphalt overlay. That's $137,533 a mile in my market, and they're going to be doing that. David Mayo, I don't know if they started yet, but we were in a late bid opening. It's going to be in October, so I think we're okay weather-wise and all that. That's going to be 2-inch overlay over some key roads. This study has helped me as county judge understand. I was kind of lamenting my responsibility to try to figure out how to spend money. Now, I don't go to the road department and allocate the men. I'm not that type of county judge. I've got a very good superintendent that does that. But I am in a position to say, I want to see this, set priorities. Where are you going to spend your money? How are you going to spend your money this year? How are you going to spend your money next year? That was my problem. I didn't know how to maximize stewardship of the county road dollars. This study gave me a vision again. It showed me which roads are in bad shape, which roads are getting ready to be bad, and the other categories. And what I learned from continued dialogue with these professionals, you can't put all your money in just the bad roads, because you got to maintain the system. So what we're talking about is a systematic, multi-year approach to maintaining roads. You got to have it. And if you do that, and you invest wisely, you're going to be reelected as county judge because everybody's going to think you're doing a heck of a good job. If you don't, you may have another problem, because you got to take care of the whole system. And we've got all kinds of counties. Some of you have more gravel roads. Some of you have more paved roads. Some of you have skills riding, operating equipment. You got more technical ability and so on. I don't operate graders and dozers. And I don't allocate the men, I allocate the resources. That was my challenge. So this project really helped providing us with objective data to allocate resources and helping to set priorities by knowing what we had out there. The visual inspection was a key aspect of this, and I don't minimize that. What criteria are you going to look at in your staff whenever you go out and look at the roads? What numbers of criteria, what type of criteria are you going to consider? Because there's a whole bunch of them, and they can overwhelm you. So we selected some of the top ones that we're focusing on. Alligator cracking, you know, some of the obvious things. So whenever we go out and assess our roads like you do, what are you assessing, and how do you capture that? It's important to know what you've got out there. It's important to know when a road was done. It's important to know as much as you can in your records about what was the subsoil, what's the base, what do you got, in order to know what to maintain it. So that's your database and your record system. So I don't know of anybody that Excel spreadsheets are too difficult to deal with. Excel spreadsheets are fairly straightforward and easy. You can add columns, you've got simple formulas. It's not going to overwhelm your staff capability, most likely. Now I remember when we brought computers to the road department several years ago. We brought the computers in, and I remember looking at the men and looking at those computers like, my God, what is that? And I didn't want to force the road staff to use computer systems and get bogged down and be unhappy and not do road work. And I don't want to do that now. So I'm being very careful about what kind of software we're going to use to maintain this system. Keep it simple. Excel spreadsheets are pretty dadgum simple. You're going to have somebody who can deal with that. You can add data as you get it. And then there are programs out there that will use Excel spreadsheet data and load into the program. So you're not going to waste your time if you want to go to a program.
David, in collecting your data, when someone actually went out on the road, what did you use to keep it from being more objective instead of being subjective as far as, did you have a checklist or something that as you evaluated the road that determined whether it was good, fair, poor, or lost?
Well, that's where the professionalism and Michael Morgan's knowledge and his capability to assess that came in. That's what we paid him for. And then, you know, Stacy and Daryl also provided, I didn't do that and Jim didn't do that. Now, we're going to do that ongoing somewhat, but we truly intend to continue to invest in this project by bringing Michael back in and doing it in maybe next year. Because we're going to invest in what we're going to do this year, and we're going to keep it going. They did that for us. But you don't have to hire somebody necessarily if it's going to be alligator cracking, rutting, drainage issues. You can identify 3 or 4 basic things that your men could assess and have some kind of systematic way to document that and record that, then you'd have it. If you can invest in somebody. They drove every mile of every county road to create this database. So once again, I was at a point in my career and trying to manage the road system, I flat did not know what to do. I didn't know how to effectively spend money, and this has given that vision back. It's also created excitement with Jim and the other guys in the road department that we've got something that they can take and make a difference. And we also had this collaboration with these professionals on our education and training and in construction and maintenance techniques, options. And another fringe benefit of this was we looked at our equipment. And then what other kind of equipment's out there? Now Faulkner County, I understand Faulkner County's bought a road widener. Is anybody from Faulkner County here? They bought a road widener. Well, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to me? Whenever you when you lay asphalt on a road, if you got a chip seal road, you're going to put 2 inches of asphalt on it. You just increase the edge. you just created a safety issue on that road. Now you can go back and put base on that, but there's a machine that help do that. We're going to buy one. That was a learning curve. So what kind of gears out there? What kind of fleet of trucks have you got? How are they set up? You know, we reevaluated that and other equipment. So all of those were offshoots of this study. I wouldn't underestimate the map, and Shelby's going to talk about the project that he's got going. You all know what kind of maps you've got or where they are. The database and the map that you've got is important to you, and I'll be interested in seeing how Shelby is doing. I don't know. I think he's got maybe 22 counties that he's done. We collaborated on the GIS technology with our planning and development district. So there's a staff member at the planning development district that has those skills that's doing our map. Now we also had some GIS people in the assessor's office and you know, with the parcels and the real estate, so that helps in that regard as well. There's the money, we can take that basic financial information there and project cost for next year to know how to allocate money and set priorities. And but with this other data on the road conditions to try to help set priorities. I've written kind of a summary, and I'll leave these up here on this table. If any of you like that kind of thing, I've written a summary that is be available to you. Is there any other questions for me?
CHPF -1.
I have that information.
I asked a question I'll ask. In Troy Market, in gravel road condition be incorporated into this?
Yeah, I think that's a key. Gravel roads can be incorporated into this study, so you would have and I'll go back to early in my career as county judge. I think I was 25 years old, and I met with John Kaiser, state aid engineer at that time, and I was trying to figure out how to allocate state aid money for that year, and I didn't have a clue. And I asked John for his advice. And one point that he made that was pretty fundamental, your road system needs to have drainage. You need to consider what kind of drainage you've got. If you don't have drainage on your roads, you don't have a road. You don't have a system. So what he advised me to do that year was we took and rebuilt some existing roads. I wanted to pave something new. I wanted that, but that's how we did that, and we pulled those ditches. You've got to look at that drainage system. You've got to be aware of that. This study will give you that. And so whether it's a gravel road, now you may be able to get that yourself. You may have the time to go drive all your roads and monitor that and get that yourself. This is just a tremendous resource to get that kind of objective data. And then they fine-tuned it since they did it. You can slow down the driving now. You can slow down and look at those potholes and those cracks sitting in your office on the computer. You can look at other characteristics, and the whole study's gotten much. The whole reporting methodology has improved dramatically. So I've been real impressed with once again the professionalism and the ability of all the collaborators we had on this, and it was a good experience for me. And they're here. They're here to help us all, and I encourage you to take advantage of these resources. A lot of the free training that Stacy Williams will provide to us in different aspects. You know, we love our state aid engineers. We like that project. What are you gonna do next year on state aid? When are you gonna make that decision? How are you gonna make that decision? What roads are you gonna select for state aid work or bridges? What are you gonna do? When are you gonna do that? Now's the time to be thinking about that. How are you gonna set your priorities? How are you gonna know where you can put your money? That's what this is kind of all getting at. So we've got a fairly good idea of what we're gonna do next year on state aid and what we're gonna do and if we're gonna contract anything. We got a direction.